You ever have that feeling like you're a stranger in your own life? That you're just going through the motions in a world that feels more and more distant, kind of impersonal? Well, you're not alone. That feeling, it has a name, and it might just be one of the defining crises of our time. Today, we're going to unpack this whole idea, drawing on Fritz Pappenheim's classic work, The Alienation of Modern Man.
So, we're going to start not with some dry definition, but with a feeling. A really strange disconnect that Pappenheim paints for us with this haunting image from way back in the 18th century.
Okay, take a look at this. It's an etching by Francisco Goya. What we're seeing is a woman, and she's driven by this old superstition that a dead man's tooth holds some kind of magic power. So she's trying to pull one from a hanged corpse. I mean, look at her. She's torn between being horrified and just determined. Her face is turned away, but her arm is right there, reaching out to get what she wants.
Now, Pappenheim asks us to imagine something a little more modern. A photographer rushing to the scene of a terrible car crash, trying to get that perfect prize-winning shot. The reasons are different, sure. One wants a magic charm, the other wants fame or money. But the action underneath it all is, well, it's eerily similar, isn't it? Both of them are using someone else's absolute suffering for their own personal gain.
And this right here, this gets to the absolute core of the issue. Both the woman and the photographer become what Pappenheim calls indifferent onlookers. They're not participants in the human drama anymore. They're just observers who treat another person not as a person, but as an object, a means to an end. And in doing that, they become strangers not just to the victim, but to a really crucial part of their own humanity.
So what do we call this? This profound state of being a stranger to other people and, ultimately, to yourself? Well, this brings us right to the central theme we're exploring today. Pappenheim argues this feeling isn't just some personal quirk, it's a fundamental condition of modern life. He calls it alienation. So here's the key idea. Alienation is the experience of your own life becoming something foreign to you. It's when the things you do, the systems you're a part of, the stuff you create, it all takes on a life of its own and ends up controlling you instead of the other way around. You literally become a stranger in your own story.
And this isn't just an individual problem. Pappenheim, building on the ideas of other great thinkers, suggests that alienation really defines the entire mood of our age.
Okay, this is really fascinating. The philosopher George Simmel saw this constant battle between what he called life, our creative, spontaneous, inner energy, and form, the rigid structures we build to contain it. Think about laws, social roles, technology, even artistic styles. The tragedy here is that these forms, which are born from our own life force, eventually become so rigid and independent that they end up stifling the very life that created them.
And this creates this profound sense of not belonging. The philosopher Martin Heidegger just captured this feeling perfectly with this powerful metaphor. He said that for modern people, homelessness is becoming a world fate. He didn't mean it literally, of course. He meant it existentially. We feel uprooted without a true place in a world that we ourselves have built.
We see this existential homelessness perfectly in characters like Willy Loman from Death of a Salesman. I mean, he spends his entire life chasing a form, this idea of the well-liked, successful salesman. But by pursuing this image, this smile and a shoe shine, he becomes completely estranged from his true self. And in the end, it leaves him, as the play says, absolutely lonesome and irrelevant.
All right, so let's dig into how this sense of alienation gets supercharged by one of its most powerful modern sources, our relationship with technology.
For a long time, we really believed that technology would save us. It was the ultimate symbol of progress, right? But Pappenheim points out this major shift in our thinking. That blind faith has been replaced by our growing fear, this awareness that there might be a deep conflict between the cold logic of the machine and the needs of the human soul.
Pappenheim calls this the sorcerer's apprentice effect, and it's basically a three-step process. First, we create machines to serve us, to make our lives easier. Second, that machine and the whole system around it starts to develop its own momentum, its own logic. And then finally, we find ourselves trapped, forced to serve the demands of the very system we created in the first place.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? The spirits that I summoned, I cannot now dismiss. We've unleashed these incredibly powerful forces with our technology, but we've lost the ability to control them. We've become servants to our own servants.
And this sense of powerlessness, it doesn't stop with technology. It seeps right into our political lives, making us feel like strangers in our own societies.
The writer Stefan Zweig felt this so acutely when he became a refugee back in the 1930s. He talked about spending endless hours in offices, just being reduced to a pile of paper, tax forms, border passes, permits. He said he lost a part of himself, that his essential identity was destroyed by the machinery of the state. He wasn't a person anymore, he was a case file.
And Zweig's experience, it really mirrors a wider political disconnect, right? There's this growing gulf between us and the state. We feel like our leaders are distant, that major issues are just staged for us on a screen, and that we're just spectators. Even in a democracy, the feeling that your voice actually matters can seem like a far-off dream.
So, this all brings us to a final, and I think crucial question. Pappenheim was writing this over 60 years ago, long before the internet, before social media, before any of this global connectivity. And yet his diagnosis feels more relevant now than ever. In a world that is literally designed for total connection, why do so many of us feel so profoundly disconnected? It's a thought that really makes you wonder what new forms we're creating today, and whether we still have the power to control them.